Welcome back to Horses of Courses. I'm Tania.
I'm Susanna.
And we are on the road. I think, gosh, it all blends in together the
We're
last
on the
2
road
weeks.
for 64 days.
So we are in Missouri, and
Yes.
we have Nelson Detweiler with us, Adam Black, and Honey May. And we are on the last bit of this sojourn across the United States and back. We went to Pismo Beach, California. Nelson taught a gentling feral horse clinic there. It was part of a grant that I had pitched and Heart of Phoenix received from the ASPCA. So this is the final leg of that year-long clinic. And
A year-long clinic. Boy, that'd be a lot to take in.
well, a year-long set of clinics. We've been to New York and Charlestown and now to Pismo Beach, California. I thought what was really good about this particular clinic was that it kind of got a hold of everything I really wanted the clinic to be when I pitched it. There was, some violent stuff that happened at a rescue in another part of the United States that kind of led to this idea. And what happened there this last weekend showed what I hoped it would, that you can get a horse gentled, haltered, leading, picking up their feet without any extreme pressures, without ever becoming aggressive, harsh. It may take a little longer, but ultimately it was a 3-day process. And I mean, to me, why in the world would you want to do it any quicker than that?
Well, we left the horses set up really well for them to continue on, too. I really thought we left them in a good place for them to just continue to build on that. I say we, Nelson did.
Right. And so, if you look across the interweb, you'll find people say all kinds of things about how a thing has to be done. This was filmed by this lovely young boy, this little surfer guy named Charles. He spent 3 days. He was so nice. He also was very impressed and very interested in what was going on, but everything was filmed. So now there's no question that it can be done. And this was 2 separate horses, 2 different personalities. The horses had the same or similar backgrounds, but they were their own individual selves, a little different.
They were siblings, though.
Right. But they, mare and a gelding, and it worked equally for both horses in 3 days. And now we've been getting updates as we've traveled back toward Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia, where those folks on site have been able to continue in that same way. And I think it was important even for them to see, you do not have to rush. There is no hurry. You'll get there faster if you start slow. What is the saying? I don't remember.
Slow is fast and fast is slow.
Yeah, there's some other saying. It'll come to me when we're moved on to another topic. But ultimately, you end up further along if you make sure the basics are well covered. And I just thought it went really well. And the fact that it's all documented, that was the goal. So that if there comes a time where someone says, you don't understand, this horse wasn't handled, we had to fill in the blank. And whatever in that blank was rough and rushed. No, you don't. No, you do not.
I like pairing it with the veterans, too. I thought that was a really nice added element there, especially since it was Veterans Day on Monday.
And our host was Helping Heroes Through Horsemanship. Simon and Yvette were great hosts. And I think this approach that was taken by Nelson, which Heart of Phoenix, wholeheartedly supports and wants to see more of. And I think a lot of our trainers that we choose to work with, this is how they approach things with some variations. I think it was important that these folks even, maybe they got a different view of how things can go. And I think it's just always good to see some slight variations. And I really think they will, with the next horses that come in there that are unhandled, probably, keep some things they learned this weekend. And that, that's the hope. And it was well attended. It was well received. There were people that came on Friday that asked Yvette to be able to come back on Saturday because they were so they enjoyed it so much, multiple people. And I've actually had some folks sign up for the Heart of Phoenix newsletter that attended. So I think all the way around it was a huge success. And all the electronics that I purchased worked as I hoped they would. That's always important. So as we head back, I look forward to, we got some beautiful photos of the clinic with a volunteer that they had there, and I look forward to seeing the footage. It was all the way around great. And I think one of the coolest things was that the camera guy, I was 19 years old, never had messed with horses. He went in at the end, and Nelson walked him through what he had just watched happen for 3 days with some folks with some experience. And I thought that was...
He was very excited about that.
Yeah, and did a great job. It showed you how much attention he paid. And it almost kind of backs up what I kind of think it's easier to work with and teach someone that doesn't come in with preconceived notions or previous things they've learned. It's just kind of a blank slate in some ways. I think it's easier. It's certainly easier to work with a horse that's a blank slate. And so it was just a success. So if you're interested in seeing that footage, hopefully at some point in 2026, we'll have that in an accessible link online somewhere. We'll see how that works out. All right. Well, we're going to start with horse trailering. We were actually having a discussion about this while we were trying to come up with topics for this podcast, and it's its own podcast on its own. There's no way we could cover all the things about it, but one of the important things I think we all came away with was how often people, once you get the horse in the trailer and you start driving, you don't think about the horse back there enough. Trailering horses, I think Nelson and Adam seem to feel this way, and that research backs it up, that it's a hard thing for a horse to say to you, okay, I'll get in that box. And trauma is created by it, and it's extraordinarily stressful. Any type of study, research that's been done on their heart rate and their brain activity, it's probably the most difficult thing we ask a horse to do routinely. So when that horse is in that trailer, be aware and be kind in how you're driving. It's not fair. And I don't know, I've talked to people before that have gotten back there and had somebody drive them around.
I have done that with my kids, because I wanted my kids to understand how it felt for the horses. And they got out and they were like, why does any horse like this? This is terrible. It beats you to death. Right.
So be aware of that when you are putting your horse in that trailer. Sometimes they're not necessarily unwilling to get in the trailer. They're unwilling to experience what they know is going to happen next. And if you make those experiences when they're in the trailer as low stress as possible, there's no way to alleviate all the stress in how you drive. And I've ridden across the whole country with various people, especially the East Coast, with all kinds of different drivers. And there's a huge variation in how people choose to drive when they're hauling horses, the speed in which they drive, the way in which they brake, take curves. And so part one is drive fair to the horse. Don't create more difficulty in loading that horse simply because they know how you're going to drive.
Well, keep in mind too that when we're riding in a vehicle, we have the ability to see that the road is fixing to curve or that we're fixing to go up and down a hill. The horse is just stuck in that box and can't see anything. So we can brace ourselves for what's coming, and the horses are just like, oh crap, must shift my weight.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't even think about that aspect, but they don't have a way to be prepared. And so maybe some of the things, it isn't in the process of how you're loading the horse, it's the horse knows what's going to happen next. The other thing I wanted to add that has been my recent experience is make sure you're hauling with 14-ply trailer tires. Right, so we had, to me, I was saying we just put trailer tires on these trailers, and and that did work until it didn't. So I went through a series of changing tires. I think I've changed 10 tires in 2025 by myself.
It's ridiculous.
And I changed 3 in a 7-day period. So then I showed up to the garage and I was like, I want 14-ply trailer tires. Do not, if I ever suggest anything else, just do not listen to me and make sure you're putting that on, because think of how stressful it is for the horse. Now a lot of these trips I was hauling without horses on, it happened once I had unloaded, but when you pull over on the side of an interstate and horses are sitting there, that is really, really difficult for them as well, especially if it's in the summertime. So you can really end up creating some issues there with your horse if you're not, especially super quick. I've changed a lot of tires. I'm quicker than I used to be, but it's still, that's tough on the horse. Set yourself up for success with 14-ply tires.
Well, and you're out there banging around on the bottom of the trailer, a lot of times right under their front feet or whatever, and then you jack up their front feet in the air and their butt's still low. The whole thing is just, and they're like, we have no idea what's going on here.
And then one thing that I have said, we had an adopter come once to get a horse, and the trailer was too small. I wasn't there for it when it first started happening, and they fought with this horse for a long time before I was made aware. And then when I ended up going, I said, this is an unfair ask. We're not going to put the horse in that trailer. And your budget is what it is, but the horse doesn't have to accommodate your budget. And if you can't afford or access a trailer that's a fair size for the horse that you are trying to haul, then you're not the person to move that horse from point A to point B. Do not try to put a horse in a trailer that is too small. And I see it not infrequently. And, when we went to have a trailer made custom, I had it extra tall, extra wide, because obviously as a rescue, I don't know what we are going to pick up. But, people get frustrated at the horse and say the horse is the problem. He doesn't want to load. And then I see the trailer, and I was like, he shouldn't. He should refuse to get in that. I want a horse with enough sense to say, no, I don't fit in there. I'm not going. And a lot of little 2-horse bumper pulls are too narrow. They're not tall enough. If you're dealing with thoroughbreds or some big standard breds or draft horses, whatever it is, if it's not tall or wide enough for your horse, then sell it and get something else. Don't sit and fight and insist a horse become kind of, to me, so beaten down that it gets in there.
Well, if your horse bonks their head getting in the trailer, they remember that the rest of their life. Like, that's a hard thing to overcome when your horse bonks their head getting in the trailer.
Also, I have heard at least 2 stories in my years of horses unloading that shouldn't have been put in trailers and hit their heads and had seizures and died on sight from coming off fast because they want out, and they were way too tall, and they had their head down and their head hits as they come out. And I know of at least 2 instances where horses were killed in that situation. So it's not only, and the horse really didn't do anything wrong, it came out, but it didn't know where its head needed to be necessarily, and it comes down, so that can cause a lot of damage and potentially death. So, you have a choice when you're buying a trailer to pick the right fit, and if, or make sure you can work with somebody to borrow a trailer that fits your horse. I don't think it's fair to put them in sardine cans. Moving on, we've got a couple of things coming up where you can donate. One fun thing that we do, this is our 3rd year, is you can mail us a Christmas card. I post photos of every Christmas card we get on the Heart of Phoenix page, and we encourage you to send like $1, $5, whatever kind of cash you have around. If you want to send more, that's fine. If you want to send a Christmas card and you can't send a donation, that's fine too. We like getting the cards. And
we get people who make the cards, and a lot of people put a lot of detail into making the cards, but I like getting the cards from the kids the best. Those are my favorite ones.
Oh, we've had some really grand cards handmade.
We really have.
And, I collect them at the P.O. box, and it's just kind of a festive thing that we enjoy, but it also raises some money. So remember to hop on the Heart of Phoenix page on Facebook, and you can see the address that you mail the cards to, but it's P.O. Box 81, Shoals, West Virginia 25562. So
did
get
you tell
those.
them to hop on the hop page?
Hop on the hop page, yes. Hop on the hop page.
Hop on pop or hop on hop?
So that is one thing you can do that's super simple. It's kind of fun. It's festive. Number 2 is we have our yearly gala coming up. We were kind of on the fence as to whether to do it this year because we've had a lot of things back to back. I knew I was going to be in California, and then I knew, we'd had the trail ride in the fall, but we decided to go ahead with it. It's the Boots and Bling Ball. It's a little different this year. You can just dress up your boots as high end as you want or as casual as you want. That's up to you. It's We always have a DJ, and we have a silent auction with some great gift baskets. If you are local or if you want to travel in, we do have some folks traveling in this year from at least as far away as New Jersey. So you can travel in. You can reach out to us for hotel recommendations. We'd love to meet you. But if you can't attend, there are lots of volunteers that enjoy coming, and we always want our volunteers to have a sponsored ticket. So you can sponsor this year. The ticket price is $40. So if you want to sponsor a volunteer, maybe you followed HOP and there's somebody that really stands out to you that you'd like to say thank you for what you're doing, let us know and you can sponsor that ticket, and we'd really appreciate it. Also, we just accept sponsors for the event costs in general, and gift baskets, gift cards, all of that is a lot of help. So that's a way to help leading up. I think it's December 13th at the Venetian in Milton, West Virginia.
Yeah. So, but they can donate baskets if they want to put one together too, right?
Yeah, so we have one adopter who makes, in Ohio, that always attends, and she makes beautiful gift baskets for both the Ride for Rescue and for the gala. She'll be there this year, and those go over well. I mean, obviously it's like 2 weeks before Christmas, so people are buying things for gift giving, and so if you want to put something together, mail it if you're local and drop it off. But what I would prefer is you bring it to us and attend. That's my favorite. But it's a lot of fun. We go over our end of year statistics, and we do a Volunteer of the Year award usually. This year we are going to have karaoke, which is my favorite. Mm-hmm. And we have there's heavy appetizers, and it's just a nice time. It's very festive. We're doing a balloon arch and a photo booth also. So we hope to see you there, or that you're able to sponsor a volunteer. Up next, we want to tell you about a horse that actually recently came back into the rescue. I'm very proud of the fact that, 10 years later, we were still in existence to be able to be there for this horse. When you place horses as a rescue, and I think about when you want to donate to a rescue, you want to consider the longevity potential, because if you place a horse and then it ends up needing to come back, you want to make sure that organization is there. So if you followed along with Heart of Phoenix a long time, you may remember the story of Jake Fiddy. He was purchased at an auction for, you've guessed it, $50. The name Jake came from a West Virginia kind of statement my mama used to say: if you looked real homely, you were going out like a Jake. And he was this kind of scrappy looking little Appaloosa gelding that was, he was skinny, and back in 2014 horses were selling really low, and this was in Jackson County, West Virginia, the Ripley stock sale, and I think we were the only bid. I mean, if there was a bid before, it was maybe 25 and then we bid 50, but I think we just were the opening bid at $50, and we won him. You wouldn't find that happening at auctions these days, and hopefully we don't circle back to that. But you were volunteering, Susanna, when we got him, right? Yeah. Or no? Yeah. So you had just been volunteering maybe a year, maybe two?
I don't know. I don't keep track of time like that.
But you've never even seen him in person, have you?
Yeah, I have.
Under what?
He was at Susan's when I was there one time.
I don't remember him ever being at Susan's, but Jake came in. He was 10 years old. He was in Appaloosa. He ended up getting sick pretty quickly with enteritis, and he spent about a week on medical management at Rood and Riddle. His enteritis is where fluid accumulates in the intestines and the stomach, and just it keeps swelling, and that was a big ordeal, especially that many years ago. I mean, it was about a $10,000 medical management.
It's really painful. That's what Raven had when she was so sick.
Yeah, it can happen, in
very
humans,
painful.
Animals. Thankfully, it doesn't have any rate of reoccurrence. Just because they've had that, they're at no greater risk to ever have it happen again. But he ended up adopted at a historic farm as just a companion pet, which suited him fine. But unfortunately, this kind of family-held historic farm started to fall apart, and the care started to go downhill. But because of the fact that we continue to check in on our horses, because Jake was placed before we even started branding everything regularly. He came in the year we started branding, but it wasn't done every single time. It wasn't feasible quite yet. So he wasn't even branded, but we kept up with him as we should, checking in at least once a year. And when things started to change, I was like, okay, well, we're just going to go pick him up, you know, and it ended up. And his pals. They always come back with more. That's actually my father-in-law says that. You raise kids, you send them out, they come back home at least once, and they always bring more. And that's what horses do often when we've placed horses, and then they need to come back to us. The owners of or adopters will say, well, can you take our other horses? And we try our best to say yes. So Jake came back with 3 companions, and he came back thin, you know, but I'm just glad we were able to go in and get him and bring him back. He's 21 years old now, and so he's, you know, gaining weight, and his teeth were rough and his feet, and just, if you're hearing this, what may come into your head is, well, why didn't you go get him sooner? I mean, you know, it was good until it wasn't, and when it wasn't, we went and retrieved him, and that's just the best that you can hope for. You can't keep them 100% safe. There's some risk when you place a horse. So we were glad to bring him back into the rescue, and I really hope, you know, we can find the right fit for him, and it works out, you know, for the rest of his life now. I mean, he seems pretty spry, even though he's 21.
Yeah.
All right, we're in a transition period. We have the ding-a-ling of the month, and some members of our team are like, maybe let's call it something else, but I'm not sure what we're going to call it, so I'll just be candid with you. We're mulling that over, because maybe it's a little aggressive. I'm a little aggressive. Susanna's not as aggressive. So we're trying to think what we're going to call it, but we did have a topic, so I didn't want to like gloss over and not cover the topic. But Susanna took the call.
Yeah.
That is our non-ding-a-ling story of the month, because
no, wait a minute. What?
It is ding-a-lingy, but
we're not calling
it that. We're going to think of something else. We did hear a suggestion of the Bless Your Heart Award, and I like that.
Bless her heart in Kentucky is kind of an insult.
Right, well, and I kind of liked that part about it. But some team members felt that it was still a little personalized, and it should be more about the controversial issues. So if you have thoughts when you hear this, you can send them our way to make us more politically correct.
The controversial issue is pretending that you're a rescue just to make a profit off of a horse.
Right, so, but you took the call, and specifically, what was the call?
Well, it was a very old man. I don't know how old he was. I mean, if I had to guess, I'd guess he was 75 at least. But he wanted me to know that there were a couple people who lived near the main facility who were taking horses and saying they were part of that rescue in Lesage, and then they were running them to the auction house and selling them there for profit. And when people thought that they were going to a rescue and they were going to get rehomed after careful consideration, blah, 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 blah.
And specifically, it was phrased in a way that the insinuation was they were with Heart of Phoenix.
Yes, even though he said they didn't mention Heart of Phoenix.
They said the rescue in Lesage.
The rescue in Lesage, which is
right.
us.
Which is us. And so Susanna shares this with me, and I think it's really important that be public. So I did a post, and I said there is some suggestion that there's a couple named, I didn't give the full name, very normal names, Terry and Jen. There's a million Terry and Jens, but the story was a Terry and Jen had made a claim that made folks potentially think they were accepting horses on behalf of Heart of Phoenix, and that if this were true, we wanted folks to know that if you were turning a horse over to us, you would very much be communicating with Susanna or I, and that there's a process and forms, and you would know for certain. And that if you ever had any question as to whether you had turned a horse over to Heart of Phoenix or had been tricked, you could always reach out to us, and we would be, we would talk, you through, just in case someone read that and felt that they had been misled.
And then I got another phone call.
Right, and then so we post this, and as we should, because the thing I think that was important about it is there are organizations that claim to be rescues that do things like this. And there are organizations I know of that have people accept horses and then they run the horses to auction for profit. I mean, they're disreputable, but it happens. So what could have happened if we hadn't done this post is the story could have turned to say Heart of Phoenix is doing this intentionally as a way that they are partnering with these people, and that was important that be out there. We are not associated with these people, because that I could easily see folks flipping it. But so you got another call though.
Yeah, I got another call. This one wasn't nearly so friendly. Yeah, so this person said she was Jen and she didn't appreciate our post, and we didn't have any way to verify that was true, and she had a lot of haters who specialized in doing this kind of thing, and her haters had done this in multiple states, and I don't even know, went on and on and on. Maybe I should talk to the board about their policy about publishing people's names online and all kinds of stuff.
So Susanna calls me and I said, listen, there's one reason and one reason alone. When we use casual names that are very common with no specific details whatsoever, there's one reason somebody like that calls you, and it's because they're doing what has been shared. That said, the post will remain. Well, then all kinds of things. We had, probably 50, 100 comments and stories that were very nefarious associated with this
people
group
who
of people.
had this experience with this couple.
So either way, when I feel like when you get something like that, when something like that is circulating, you really do need to be on top of that and make sure, without saying specifics, because I worded it, this may not be true. For the chance that it is, here's the slightest bit of information. It didn't incriminate anybody by name. Using somebody's common first names doesn't, without any other details, not at all, incriminating, unless you are literally doing that. You wouldn't feel attacked. But if Heart of Phoenix is accepting a horse, you're dealing with us. You will know that it's us. You will be using forms on our website. You will be directed to those forms. There's no other way to go around it. Don't let anyone else tell you. And this, to me, and what I said in the post is, make sure before you turn your horses over to someone claiming to be a rescue, that you have verified the quality of that organization, the reputation of that organization, and that you agree with their policies. Make sure you do that. Put that amount of time in. It won't take that long. Don't just let some low-end horse trader pull in and say, well, I'm a rescue, and then your horse is at Sugar Creek, 12 hours later. Don't do that. And it happens all the time. Sad stuff. That leads, I think, really well into our main topic this month, which is, should you have an application when you're an adoption agency? Should you, Susanna?
How about no?
Should you just trust your adopters to tell you the truth?
Yeah, no, definitely not.
So yeah, Susanna for a while ran our applications. She doesn't now, but she'll jump in and work on them occasionally when our team needs some help. But we have a team of, what is it? Maybe 8 people that do the applications total.
Maybe more.
So,
I don't know. There's a lot of them.
There is some controversy, depending on who you ask and where and what, as to whether you should have an application to adopt, and if you should, what should that look like? How much is too much? Where is the overreach? Where have you made it impossible for good homes to be approved? Or are you making it too easy for bad homes to adopt? And it's a fine line, and we have reevaluated our process many, many times. Susanna's been with us for long enough to have seen us go through probably 10 different approaches, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, because, yes, for sure.
So there was a point where, way back 10 years ago, Susanna would process an application by herself. Well, when that would happen, then she would reach out to me and we would talk about it. But then it was one set of eyes on everything, and then me looking over it. What we found is,
Are you telling them I didn't do a good job?
Well, what I'm saying is you can't do a good job when it's just one person doing an application. You can do as good of a job as possible for one person, But what we saw is like the more eyes on the application, the more you're apt to catch discrepancies, the more apt you are to connect dots that lead to a good outcome or a bad outcome. And so what we do now, and this has been an evolved process, is you have an application comes in, you have a processor who grabs that application, they reach out, they will ask for your income, your driver's license, your facility photos, including all horses on the property, and your fence, your stalls, etc. You've already filled out the application, and there's a separate team member who calls the veterinarian. And once everything checks out that way, all the information looks good, it's being placed in an area that the whole team can look at all of this information. Now, we don't circulate like the income verification or the driver's license. That's just verified, then that's never circulated around. But then we have an interviewer that gets on the phone and talks with the person who's totally separate from the processor and the vet reference, a person who does the vet reference. And then Susanna and I and Stephanie Davis, like, we will look over all of that information, and if there's no red flags, then that can be approved. Or if there are red flags, then we decide what is the next step. Is this something we ask, hey, circle back to us in 6 months, these are the areas to improve, or this is just not compatible.
Remember that time that person turned in an application and they'd taken pictures off of the Morton Barn website and submitted them as their facility pictures?
Yes. Well, so it is worth knowing, we do a reverse, like the application processors reverse Google search your photos. And that is not the only time that that's happened.
Well, then also there's been a few who have said this person has been their veterinarian, blah, 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 and the veterinarian's like, we've never heard of them. We don't have anything for that address. That's not our patient.
Or people that will give numbers of friends and family who are not the people that they're supposed to be.
Oh, yeah, that happened once that I know of.
And so, or people will put down references and they think they're going to get, like, we're not going to call it, or they really assume somebody is going to give good info,
Well, because some rescues do that. They have an application, but they never actually call the references. Well, as a case in point, I adopted that Westie not too long ago and filled out the application and asked me for all the references and the name of my veterinarian, how long I've been there, and the address, and they didn't even call anything. They just looked at it and said, okay, approved, right in front of me.
Well, so I want people to know, hearing this, that even having an application dissuades about 75% of non-savory homes. I believe that is true. Just having the application will put off a large number of bad inquiries. But if you are of the mindset that, because this is what people used to say to me, they would say, you should just be thankful people want to take these horses.
Yeah,
no, I'm not.
I hate that. That drives me crazy.
No, I'm not. I'm not doing this to be thankful that just any kind of home. We've already gotten them out of any kind of home. And that is not where we're going to put them back if we can help it. And there is a fine line, and I understand why we've ended up here where there's now all this pushback to applications, because rescues were so severe for so long that nobody was good enough. Well, that's also crazy. There are people that are good enough. There are many people that are good enough. And so if you're going to hoard everything thinking that only you can provide the care, the animals actually suffer in that instance. And then the animals that need to come in don't get the safe spot because you are so sure that you're the only one. So I think that's another benefit to having a team approach to the applications. Sometimes any one of us can get hung up on a thing. I do it. Susanna does it. Some of the application team, one of us might get hung up on, well, this horse here's too heavy. Okay, they have a horse that's too heavy. Everything else is glowing. But today, we are intolerant of having a fat horse, as you should be. It's a life and death thing. But we can get so hung up on one area, and it takes the other team going, hey, this is a good app. This is a good application. Calm down, Susan. Or,
What?
I'm, just like the phrase, not you. But so it's good to have a team. So we're catching the bad things, but we're also telling the other part of the team. There are this is a good application. There's something here that's not perfect, and there always will be, and there's something within ourselves. We all can think of something we're doing at home where we're taking care of a horse and we let the horse down, or it could be better. And so it keeps things realistic. So I really like having a team. But if you were to ask any of us, do you think, and Susanna knows I do this, do I not? I'll say, maybe once every third month, I will ask them in the chat, is there anything we're doing right now that's overreach? Is there one thing that you think we can remove that is a barrier? And what have they said lately for probably a year? They say,
I don't know.
No, I mean, they just say there's nothing. Like, I always want to see, are we making it too hard? And when I've asked that question for probably 2 years, there is nothing they say to change.
Sometimes we go through and take the applications ourselves just to see what it's like from the other end.
What do you mean?
Well, like sometimes me or Tanya will go through and do an application and then be like, disregard this, we're just testing something.
Oh, well, yeah, like just to go through, if I was filling it out, does this seem are we kind of asking the same thing twice? Can it be made shorter? Maybe we're not changing the way we screen, but could it be made shorter?
Yeah.
I'm who makes all of those things, and I'm verbose, and so I will say to them, go through and like renounce all but the essentials in the way that this is worded. One thing that we did add that I think's important, and I think it's the best thing we've ever done application-wise by far, is we added a self-screening quiz. It took me about 3 months to create this flow chart where you go in, and I think it makes it, because we had this question, what about the people who look at the application, they click it, and they say, this is too much, I can't do it. I'll never be approved, I'm not good enough, I don't have a fancy enough place, I can't get all this information together. Well, so we made this self-screening quiz where you have a landing page, you can go through it in about 3 minutes, and it asks questions and immediately gives you an answer based on how you answer the question. You know whether you're a good fit and what we're looking for, and you don't ever have to talk to us. We don't need to interact with you. It feels not personal, so that maybe there's this one thing that would keep you from adopting, and you can find out on your own what that one thing is through this flow chart that's automated. And then you don't feel like we told you you weren't good enough. You read it, you now know what we expect. Maybe you're going to come back later when that's fixed. But we also, are able to answer a lot of the questions in a way that doesn't feel like we're declining you. That has increased the number of inquiries probably 3 times. And we have a lot of inquiries anyway. But probably, how many? 800? I think 800 people since we started the quiz at the beginning of the year. I think I started it. I got it working. I think around 800 people have done that quiz. And it cut down the number of applications by about maybe a fourth less applications received. But far fewer unsavory applications.
Yeah.
So what it did was, and why is that important? Well, obviously time matters. It's volunteers doing this. There is an application fee that goes to our processors that they collect, but it's a small fee. What it did is it allowed the people who couldn't be approved to know exactly where the breakdown is. Because once you apply, we don't disclose specific reasons because that incriminates your references. So that made it hard. How can we tell you how to be better if we can't share with you where the problem was?
Right.
But we can't protect the anonymity of what the references have shared and then share it with the applicant. So this self-screening tool, if it asks you have all of your horses had a dental float with a speculum in the last 12 months? That's one of the questions. If you say no, you can't go any further with the quiz, and you can never get to the application. The application is not something you can even link to. It's not accessible. It will say, hey, thanks so much for your interest in adoption. At this time, we do require that every horse have had a dental float with speculum in the last 12 months that you own, and we need to be able to verify that with a provider. If at some point, 12 months from now, this would apply to you, we'd love to have you start back with this quiz, and we'd like to receive an application. Or it may say, if you're a first-time person, it'll ask the question, are you a first-time horse? Will you be a first-time horse owner or adopter? If you say yes, the next question is, are you willing to board and keep your horse in training for 12 months? If you say no, it's that same thing. Hey, we know in order to succeed with a horse for the first time, you need to be working with a trainer in a lesson program and learn how to care for a horse. So in order to set you up for success, etc. So at least people, when they complete this, they may not agree and they don't have to, but at least they know where that breakdown in our process working with them would be, and they don't leave with a denial. They leave with an improvement plan if they want to improve.
You know what the number one question that I always get from people who are thinking about applying is?
What?
Do you adopt to horse owners who have barbed wire fences? That's the number one question that I get from people who are thinking about applying.
Well, and that is actually answered in the quiz now, but the answer is it depends.
Yeah,
it depends.
It depends on how it's set up. I myself have barbed wire fences in some of my pastures on some sides.
Yeah, I mean, and so we always do say through that process, if you have questions, call Susanna, not me, please, and walk through like the process and let her help, because a question like, what does your barbed wire look like? What kind of acreage? How many horses do you feed right around it? What horse are you interested in? Those are things that factor, but we don't really draw a hard line on fencing unless it's just poorly maintained. I think, like poorly maintained. I can't think of a certain type of fence, if it was done properly, that we automatically say no to.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say we have tended, if your perimeter fence is one strand of electric, and we have had people that have that set up, we can't do that. I won't do that, but it can be interior, but not your perimeter. Can't just be a single strand of like electric.
Well, and it kind of depends on how big the area that you're talking about you fenced in. Like if you fenced in a 100 by 200 pen with barbed wire,
well, that's what I'm
probably
saying.
Not going to make
right,
it.
Right. I mean, there's so many things. So people do ask that a lot, and a lot of people say they'll start off with, "What I have isn't fancy." That's fine.
Either.
We don't care about that. I mean, we just want it to be safe, and that's all. And people can argue about what's safe, and they will, and that's fine. I think, the things we care most about are the horses you have currently healthy? Are their needs met? Do you have a history of good vet and farrier care, and a good history of being fair to your horse in terms of how you ride, how your tack fits? Those are what's important. The place itself, that's kind of low end of the list unless it's very dangerous. That's kind of low end of the list. But going back to, kind of the original question of should you have an application process, I think that I know of people that are in the sales world that sell dogs that have an application process selling. Right? I mean, I know you, I'm sure, have ran into that, Susanna.
Yes.
Breeders. I know horse breeders. I know many dog breeders through my life that you have to apply to even purchase. So, if you're willing to put the amount of time, if you think about how much money goes into a horse that comes through Heart of Phoenix, I would think the average horse, no less than $5,000, some far, far more, but no less than $5,000 goes into these horses, and the fees tend to be, a fourth of that, unless you're talking about horses of the ATFO, and even then, the average fee there doesn't exceed the amount of investment that we have in the horse. And if you consider the odds of a horse ending up in a rough situation, I think that the application is a small thing, but there is kind of a trend to say, let's just let the horses, there are so many horses coming in, let's just let them go out. And we're just, we can't do that. We can't do it. Not only do we want you to apply and be approved, but we also want you to meet the horse and make sure it's a good fit. And sometimes I think Susanna has a specific story where a person had applied, they were approved to adopt, but when they met the horse, it wasn't a good fit. Alfie.
Yeah.
You know, if we had just, what would have happened if we had let them apply and not meet him and just let them take him home?
Well, I think it would have quickly unraveled, but I also think that they would have loved him so much that he wouldn't have gotten sent back. So,
right.
But what ended up happening is, I said, you guys just aren't going to be a match, and they went home and took a whole nother year of lessons, and Alfie was still with me. And then they called and said, well, I've taken a whole year of lessons. Can we come try again? And then they were a great fit. He's been in that home happily for, I don't even remember how many years now, but several.
Well, but I think it's important to go back to you saying, well, they would have loved him and kept him, but at what price to him or the kid's safety? You know, at what price? There are plenty of people that will keep a horse, and what's happening to the horse isn't fair. I think it's, I think that goes back to almost that thing of, well, you should just be happy to find them a home, but we aren't. Just somewhere that they can be is not sufficient. Is it where they should be? Is what they is whatever that they need specifically going to be in that home? And so in that instance, what he specifically would have needed, or for the child's well-being, that wasn't in the home at that time. You know, it took some dedication, and thankfully those people did that. But when you have a horse that's placed sight unseen, and here's what people will say. They'll say, well, in the sales world, people buy and sell horses all the time sight unseen. Yes, high-end horse people do. That's a totally different thing. But that is not your adopter base. The adopter base are, mid-level at best to entry-level horse people. And it is really important that not only have they done an application, but that you kind of require that they meet the horse and it works, in person. Oh, but and even that can happen. I mean, you, Susanna, yourself know. I mean, how many, several horses that you even did meet, but they just didn't end up being the right fit. And what would have happened with all of those horses if there hadn't been a welfare organization to be available, to help with them, going way back, years ago. Even in the meeting, you meet them, but they weren't horses. Well, let's see. Splenda.
Yeah.
Splenda, then Spicy, as a result. And then that buckskin horse that I can never remember his name, but he had one.
Who?
He has a name.
My buckskin horse?
Wasn't he a buckskin horse? Yeah, your buckskin horse.
Cisco.
So even you can have all the...
Why are you naming all my horses? There have been other horses.
Because I'm talking about, I haven't had that experience. I'm saying share that experience as to why, a horse being a fit matters, and why you should go through those steps, because you can meet a horse. You didn't meet Cisco and ride him, right? He wasn't under saddle.
Right, he wasn't under saddle.
Right.
I sent him to Brenda Hansen and had her put him under saddle.
Right, and it just wasn't the horse for you.
Right. Not that there was anything wrong with him.
No, nothing wrong with him.
He just didn't want to dip-de-doodle down the trail. He wanted to get her done.
Right, and so we try really hard to not place horses not under saddle for that very reason, because our own experiences say if the horse isn't under saddle, it's really hard to say whether it's going to be a fit. And also, if an adopter puts the horse under saddle, who did it? Did they create baggage? If the horse comes back once they're under saddle, are you going to have more problems? Are you going to be, undoing things? We tend to like to keep babies until they're under saddle, because it sets them up for success. We just had a baby come back, 9. He came back because he didn't grow as big as the adopters thought that he would. And his attitude never came around to what they thought they wanted to see, And so here he was started, and it's fine. I mean, but it was different than we would have done it. And now he's back. So it's almost, for us, easier. Let the baby stay. Let's get him under saddle. Now we kind of have an idea of roughly how big they're going to be. You can try the horse, see if it's a fit, and all that works, rather than have a horse for 2 years. Oh, he's not big enough. Now the rescue has to come and take him back. But that's where screening comes in, because if it hadn't been a good home, and it was a good home, where would that little guy be who's pretty quirky and very small? Like, what would have happened to him if we weren't there to take him back? And if we hadn't screened well and the adopter knew there's a process, there's a contract in place, let's let him go back to Heart of Phoenix and start over and get him the right fit.
Yeah. Well, and our application, I think, for good horse people gives good horse people the reassurance that we ourselves are good horse people, like that we mean what we say, because then they can know that if the horse isn't a good fit, that we'll take it back and we'll do what we said in that process, and the horse will still be safe, because we're proving to them that we're trying really hard to keep the horses safe.
Well, it's reassurance that if it's not a fit, you are not left holding the bag. We will come get the horse back. If you want a refund of part of your fee, we can do that. It is unusual for someone to ask, but we certainly will do it, and it's fine if they ask for that. And they're not stuck holding a bag, because to the point of, until you have a horse at your house for 6 months, it's really hard to say. You can't be sure it's gonna, the horse is gonna be what you were looking for, and having an option where you don't have to feel like, when I have this horse that I can't ride or I'm unhappy with, we don't mesh, what do I do now?
Well, to that point, I had Tonks fostered at my house for over a year, and rode her as my guide horse at work, and really tried really hard to make that be my horse, but there was just some reason why that was not the horse that was supposed to be for me. Even though we got along just fine, I took care of her great, I kept her weight under management, but there was just something that just wasn't my horse. And one of my favorite things about that is that when her adopter came, and there was something that she did wrong, and I told her, I said, listen, if you do this again, then you can't take this horse home, because you will mess this horse up and it's not going to be a good fit at all. And she fixed it right then and there and continued on with it. And she's been successfully placed for I don't even know how many years. So
2000 and not long after 2017. So about at least 8 years, I think. Yeah. I mean, and that's been a really good placement. And so, if you are in a situation where it feels a little invasive, there is an application. It doesn't have to be with Heart of Phoenix, but you're thinking about adopting, whether it's a dog or it's a horse, whatever, there is good reason to have an application. I'm not going to tell you that every application, that there isn't some overreach in some of them. So you have to find an organization that fits with you, and you have to really trust that group. I don't recommend getting into a contract with an organization you don't trust. Maybe they have the kitten you want, but you don't think it's a good group. Don't get involved in a legal agreement with a group, an organization you do not trust and respect. Do not do that. It's like marrying someone you don't like. Do not. If somebody adopts from us, I hope and find at TENS that they have watched what we do. They believe us to be exemplary. So getting into an adoption with us, you can count on us to be who we said we were. So when you are thinking about adoption, you have a right, just as we are screening you, to screen us. We are not worried about that. We believe in that. So if you have questions about us that are about our integrity or our process and how we do things, you have as much right to ask those things, and we should be as happy to answer them as we expect you to be to fill out our application. And if you're dealing with an organization that doesn't give you that vibe, then turn around and run away. Don't get into a legal agreement with some group you don't trust. And there are plenty of good groups out there, whatever it is that you're thinking about adopting. There are good groups and there are bad. So use your noggin and look into who they are before you get into a legally binding agreement. I think that's all. I have no more words on this subject. Until next time, I'm Tania.
I'm Susanna.
And that's Horses of Courses.